Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast. My name is Jez FM and I'm the podcast producer and host here. And the Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that looks at important topics in business and life and breaks them down in a fun and lighthearted way. We want to make sure that you're learning a lot about how to adapt into the new sort of world that we're living in and getting expert advice from lots of different business leaders. And today is no different. We're talking to Christopher Miller, who is the author of the book Finding Fish in a Strength-Based Practice. Now, FISH stands for Fulfilment, Inspiration, Success, and Happiness, and he'll break that all down. But what an amazing conversation. So fun. It was emotional. It was high. It was low. We had a really good time. This is a great conversation. Christopher's fantastic. I think you'll enjoy his insights as much as we did. As always, feel free to comment and share. This podcast, you can do that on Spotify. There's now a comment feature, so feel free to head over to Spotify and you can comment. Otherwise, everybody, have a magical week. Hello everybody and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. We are very excited to have a guest and we'll get to them very shortly. But first, I'm in the room with two other people from Magical Learning, so I've got to check in and see how they're going. So Danette, you're in Melbourne this week. How are you going? And tell us, today's significant. What's the significance of that?
Today's my birthday. Very excited about that. So hanging out with the kids today. Came down yesterday, had some meetings and a couple of presentations yesterday and heading back to the farm tomorrow. But yes, very excited and have had a lovely week. And it's been so cold that the bird baths have frozen by about nearly a centimetre this week. That's how cold it's been.
Sounds horrible. Great to have you on your birthday here, Danette. Lakers, you're here. You live in Melbourne, but you're now at this location today. How are you going this week?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Here celebrating Mum's birthday as well. Made her some cupcakes last night, so we're going to eat those after this. And yeah, just other than that, been a very normal, casual week. I've been interviewing for a position at a job, so hopefully hear back from them soon.
But that doesn't mean you're leaving Magical Learning.
No. I'm still sticking around. Don't worry. You don't have to miss me. But yeah, no, other than that, it's been super chill. Mum and I might watch a movie after this as well, go to the movies. But other than that, we're cruising.
Christopher, how are you going this week?
Yeah, very well. Busy, but good busy.
Great. And now, Christopher, you are a first-time guest, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast Multiverse. You're now officially a part of it, and we're absolutely pleased to have you on. Now, Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself for people that might be being introduced to you for the first time here?
Sure. So I was born in Canada and grew up there and finished university in Canada. And then when I graduated, I moved to the UK, where I had a 12-year career in pharmaceutical management, mostly in marketing. At the end of my marketing management career, I was introduced to coaching to extend my management skill. And I fell in love with coaching enough to leave the pharmaceutical industry behind. So when my wife and I were living in Scotland and we immigrated to New Zealand, and I chose that opportunity to reinvent myself, and I became a business development coach in Wellington for about 3 years. And then I was invited to join Gallup, the management consulting firm, where I trained as a Clifton Strengths coach, and I was a senior consultant with them and led their culture change projects, mostly using employee engagement and strengths tools. And then after about 7 years with Gallup, I started my own coaching and mentoring practice, and I've been doing that for the last 7 years.
Well, what a journey. I mean, this is so exciting, and we're so excited to have you on because we're going to be talking about not only just your new book as well, which touches on some really interesting topics, but you've also got a card deck. This is the first card deck we're promoting on the Magical Learning Podcast, so this is very exciting for us. I think, do we want to start with, maybe before we get into everything, Christopher, do you just want to tell us a little bit about how you came up with the topic of Finding Fish, which is the topic of your book, and what that is based in strengths-based practice?
Yeah, so the book that launches on July 1st is the second book in a trilogy about fish. My first book was called The Joy of Finding Fish. My second book is called Finding Fish in a Strength-Based Practice. And FISH stands for Fulfillment, Inspiration, Success, and Happiness. And the fish philosophy began during the period when I was caring for my wife who had brain cancer, and unfortunately she passed away in July of 2021. And I used fish philosophy. So in both books, both the first book and the second book, I explicitly recommend and I followed the process of scoring myself on fish. So a score out of 10, from 0 to 10, how much fulfillment did you feel yesterday? From 0 to 10, how much inspiration, how much success, and how much happiness? Now, the reason I started scoring myself is because I was deep in grief. And it was a survival mechanism for me. So I was trying to figure out if my life was getting better or worse. And I was using fish to score myself to figure out whether life was getting worse or not.
Well, that's amazing. We're so thankful that you're sharing all this with us, Christopher, because it's such a powerful tool, and obviously you've used it to great effect. And now you're writing a trilogy of books to help others, so that's amazing. And you've got a deck of cards, which we'll get to as well. But I think with all that said, I think Danette's question really sort of highlights and touches on some of the key points. So, Danette, I'm going to throw to you.
Nice. And Christopher, I always have 2 questions. It's just how I love to be, because I'm so curious. And for our viewers and listeners, I actually did a book review on Christopher's new book, and I said in the book review I didn't really know much about strength-based practice before I actually read the book. So let's explain to our listeners and viewers, first of all, what is a strengths-based practice, so they can get that context.
Yeah, sure. So there's 2 sides to that. One is what is strength-based, and what is the difference between a practice and a business, because those 2 distinctions are really important. So I'll start with strengths-based. Strengths-based is an awareness of the owner and the small number of employees in a practice of what they love to do most and what they do best. And they build the practice, the delivery modes, the services, the products. They build all of that around the strengths of the individuals in the practice. And so in strengths philosophy, it's all about not trying to fix what's wrong, but to celebrate what's right. That's what strengths philosophy is all about. Now, the practice business paradigm comes from a guy called Matt Church, who Danette and I know well. He's the founder of the Thought Leaders Business School, and he coined the phrase thought leaders practice and defined the difference between a practice and a business. And really, you can imagine a business being bricks and mortar, many employees, usually low product margins, low service margins, and you are building the assets of the business for a future sale. A practice is entirely built on the reputation of the practice owner, and they are delivering all of the services with a support team. And so a practice is usually high margin, decent cash flow, and you're absorbing that cash flow for it to convert into personal assets, not business assets, and you eventually close it down without selling anything, if that makes sense.
Examples there. So my second question then is, how does fish actually help those with practices thrive?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught in feeling obligated to do things they're not good at or don't enjoy. And the idea about the idea behind finding fish in a strength-based practice is to do what you love what you do, and get paid for it, and surround yourself with people who love what you hate. So my complementary partnership with my practice manager, she loves doing the stuff that's just I do not want to touch. And I'm usually doing activity that she doesn't have the courage for or what isn't suited to. And so the complementary partnership is we know we hand off to each other seamlessly. And I know her strengths because we've done her strengths profile, and she knows my strengths. And so we We intuitively know what to give to each other because we know who's best to do it.
And I love that because even just the energy around that, to be able to sit in that space, 90%, 95, 100%, where you're doing what you're good at, what you love, what gives you energy, which gives you the fulfillment, inspiration, success, etc., to be able to, and the happiness, to be able to have a life where instead of, for some people, their life is a bit of drudgery when they go to work. This is really about bringing your best self, your best strengths and that. So what I loved about your book, Christopher, is how much this is such a great guide for people to really create a life and work that they love that is truly fulfilling. So, yeah, thank you for answering those questions. That was fabulous.
No worries. Thanks, Danette.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that thing of surrounding yourself with people who do what you hate is such a great tip. That's a huge one for me. I love that idea. So thank you for that.
And Jez, the really interesting thing is I woke up one day and went, oh my God, there are people who actually love to do what I hate. They love it. And I'm like, I can't figure that out. I'm like, how can you love that? That is the most boring, painful, repetitive task I could ever imagine. And they're like, put the music on, give me a glass of wine, I'll do it, no worries.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a huge takeaway. So, absolutely loving that. I might jump onto, let's jump into Alan's question, because that's the next one in the list. And this one's about your card deck. So he's just asked, can you tell us about your Let's Talk Love card deck? It looks like it's for more than just couples.
Yeah, it is. Can I show it? So this is the Let's Talk Love card deck, and it has about 70 cards in it, and it's been designed for lots of different uses. So I'm actually launching 3 decks on Monday. I'm launching a physical deck which has 70 cards in it. And then I'm launching 2 digital decks. I'm launching Let's Talk Love for families and high trust teams. And the families and high trust teams deck eliminates the intimacy questions that are in the master deck. And then the digital deck called Let's Talk Love for couples and self-reflection includes the intimacy cards. Yeah? So there's a safety in the families and high trust teams deck, but I would say I'm not sexually explicit in any way in talking in the intimacy questions are quite safe to absorb, but it's sometimes uncomfortable in a high trust team. Do we really need to talk about intimacy? But the power of the card decks is I've tested them on female, like clients of mine who are female professionals, business owners, male professional business owners, and several couples, and on my 20-year-old and 15-year-old sons. And it works every time. Like, it creates a meaningful dialogue about love every time in a safe way, right? Like, lots of families are all different, and couples are all different, and sometimes we are comfortable talking about love, and often we're not. What the cards do is it gives us permission to honestly answer some questions about love.
I mean, that sounds fantastic. And I love that you've broken it up so that, it's suitable for all different circumstances and you don't have to take cards out or things like that. It's just, it's all set up. So I love that, Christopher. Great. I think we're definitely going to have to get a deck and have a game. It sounds fun. All right, I might go to Legas since you're here. So Legas, what was your question? Yeah.
All right. Well, to break down the fish model, what are some good ways of finding fulfillment, inspiration, success, and happiness?
Great question. And I talk about this quite a lot in my first book, The Joy of Finding Fish. And what I've found is that fish is very personal. And so what is fulfillment for one person is not fulfillment for another. What is success for one person is not success for another. And so everyone needs to find their personal formula for fish, but finding the right coach or reading book 1 gives you coaching questions of, okay, how do I go about finding my fulfillment? So there are suggestions around creating your purpose, living your purpose. How do you articulate it in a way that is okay at work and okay in life? So we dive into the intricacies of fulfillment with a lot of context that it would allow the reader to go, okay, now I see how I can become more fulfilled, right? But I couldn't sit down with any of the three of you. I couldn't sit down with you and go, here's your formula to fulfillment. I'd have to coach you through it, if that makes sense. And the same applies to inspiration, success, and happiness.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. It's a not one size fits all. It's a personal sort of process.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I might just stay on this one, and I might go to Kanika's question here. I mean, we did talk a little bit about the process of, I guess, kind of what did inspire it. But I guess Kanika's question here is what inspired this fish model for you? But I guess a sort of secondary version of this question, to make it a little bit more specific, is how did you end up with these four, I suppose, is kind of the next bit.
So there's a funny story behind this. Several years ago, I think it was even before Fiona got sick, several years ago, I wrote a social media post about fulfillment, success, and happiness, which was, and again, I was probably, at the time, I was reflecting on how personal those things are. And after I wrote that post, I looked at it and went, oh, I'm only one letter away from an acronym. So I had to come up with an I, and that's where inspiration got added. So it literally came from, I knew in my heart fulfillment, success, and happiness were important, and then inspiration got added.
The brilliance of that for me is that inspiration was literally an inspiration. Like, it couldn't work out any better. That's amazing, Christopher, and what a good story.
I see Jez doing that exact same thing with, like, finding most of he would work in jokes usually, but like finding most of it and then like getting that one thing that pulls it all together.
Nice.
Yeah, I've done some comedy writing and stuff, and yeah, it is. Sometimes it's like that. You just need this final puzzle piece, and then it's all gonna sit nicely. So, Christopher, what you've done with that fish model by the eye specifically, I think, is perfect. Hey there, it's me, but this isn't part of the regular conversation. This is a quick ad, but it's not an ad for another business. It's actually an ad for Magical Learning, just to highlight some of the things that we're doing here. So, we love to work with businesses and run workshops internally, but one of our big passions is providing information to people in the public. So we're actually running some public workshops. So if you're loving this, we love to spread learning, and that's what this podcast is all about, free learning. But we also do love to run public workshops, and we do them in person and we also do them online. So at the moment we're running a bit of a sale, and I just thought I'd sort of highlight the topics that we are doing at the moment in case any of them resonate with you and you want to learn a bit more. Because, if you're listening to this, you obviously love developing yourself. This is another way to develop yourself with Danette and Graham facilitating, which means you can ask any questions, but obviously they're awesome to talk to. So here's a quick list of the ones that we have at the moment on sale. We've just put them on sale. So data storytelling. If you struggle to tell stories off of the numbers on an Excel spreadsheet, this is a really important one. Communicating with impact. If you feel like your communication skills could be a little bit better, this is a great one to sort of run. We also run those two as a package deal. That's the communicating with impact and data storytelling package. That one can be done online or face-to-face. In fact, all these can be done face-to-face or online. Second last, we've got developing your emotional intelligence. This is a good one if you kind of want to connect with your teammates better, you think you're struggling with interpersonal things at work. That's a really important one. And then finally, we've got finance for non-finance managers. This is one of our most popular courses because Danette used to be an accountant and knows how to explain finance really in a nice and easy way where you don't have to know the numbers. So if any of these are interesting to you, click the link below in the description. It's on our facilitation and training page on the Magical Learning website. But otherwise, everybody, enjoy the rest of the conversation. Awesome. Well, I might jump onto my question now, which is sort of when we were talking about this, there's a sort of one of the bits of your book was talking about a life well lived. And I guess for me, that's quite a broad topic. So I guess to you, what does a life well lived look like? And also, what does a life not well lived look like?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. Given when I wrote the first book, for part of it, I was in deep despair, like deep, deep despair. And I had moments where I was like, this isn't worth it. This just isn't worth it. So I was writing about fish to create hope for myself. That was what I was doing. And I only realized that in retrospect. But a life well lived is the freedom, inside freedom, to experience life the way you hoped it would look. And everyone's version of fulfillment, inspiration, success, and happiness is unique to them. And everyone, what I found interesting is everyone is able to, if I ask them, what's your fish score in the last year? What's your fish score in the last month? What's your fish score in the last week? And what's your fish score in the last 24 hours? Everybody can come up with a score. And whether you're scoring yourself a 3 or scoring yourself a 7, everybody wants to feel a 10. And they know what a 10 looks and feels like. Almost everyone knows what a 10 looks and feels like. Right? And at the end of my first book, I wrote about my favorite 10 days with Fiona. They were my 10 days. I know, based on those days, that my fulfillment, my inspiration, my success, and my happiness on those 10 days was maxed out. They are my reference point for a life well lived. I've also had, that I can count on 2 hands maximum, 0, 0, 0, 0 days. And we've all had them. And they also become a reference point. And so in any given day, you're somewhere between a 0, 0, 0, 0 day and a 10, 10, 10, 10 day.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of also a beauty in that with the 0, 0, 0, 0 days is that, like you said, you can only count them on like one hand. It's not like they're probably not happening all the time. You know, even if it's a 1, 1, 1, 1 day, that's still not a 0, 0, 0 day, you know? And so they're not going to come around all the time. And even if you are in one, it's not likely that tomorrow's going to be one, you know? Maybe it will, but there's so many options in that sort of field. So I think that that's kind of like an optimistic thing in some ways. Which I think actually, Christopher, leads us beautifully into John's question. Now, John was having some technical difficulties, but I think his question is still a great one. And I think it's sort of relevant to everything we've been talking about and probably ties it up nicely. So what are some tips to pick yourself up in times of darkness?
So I've lived this, and it starts with the basics. Like, there were days when I had to teach myself how to breathe again. And that sounds really weird, but there were days when I wasn't sure I could take the next breath. And I had to find the courage and the strength to practice breathing. The people that love you the most are the most important. So my boys were a lifeline. My care for them after we lost Fiona, their care for me after we lost Fiona, and our dog, who I had to go outside and walk, right? Just getting outside and getting fresh air, seeing trees, and getting a cuddle from my dog, all of that made a difference. So if you're in despair, do the basics, little things that give you a bit of joy, do those really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And I think that that's such a good point, because I think sometimes when you're sort of in that place, it can be so hard to think of what should I be doing, or, you know, you can feel overwhelmed with the amount of options. But I think starting at the very basics is a great way to start, you know, take everything back and then build up from there. Well, Christopher, this has been an amazing conversation. But before we go, I want to definitely grab some final thoughts from the team. So, Danette, did you have any final thoughts from today's conversation and just talking about fish as a concept?
So I've got to say, I've definitely plug for everyone to read Christopher's book. I haven't read number 1, which I'm going to now go and buy so we can read 1 and then 2. But I really, you know, Christopher, you are a person who inspires me every day, because, you know, you've had some big setbacks and you show up as love every day, which I really, really appreciate. And I'm not sure that you know that impact. So I just want to share that with you, but also with our listeners and viewers, because I think it's really important that, you know, there are times where we have deep despair, and, you know, through using that scoring, you were able to navigate it to find, you know, good days as well in hard times. So I really love the concept of scoring each of those elements, and it also is a great way, because we talk about with better awareness, which is a Robin Sharma quote, you have better choices. So I really love the fact that your book helps people to become more aware of where they're at and the trends that might be happening in those areas of their life as well. So that was a very long-winded summary. But you are awesome. What you do is awesome. And I also would love for you to just share the cover of your book again, because that was created by your son. So I think that it's also important that listeners and viewers get to see the magic that comes from your family too.
Well, and that's the art that we transformed into the front cover.
Isn't that amazing?
That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. That looks so good, Christopher. I'm going to pass to Leggers now. Leggers, any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Yeah, obviously today's conversation has been very interesting. I feel like I'm sort of entering a space where I need to sort of start looking at my personal fish as I sort of start working a new job and start getting back out there after like a moment of burnout that I've been having this year. So I definitely will take some of those tips with me to apply to my own life, because I feel like I do want fulfillment, inspiration, success, and happiness. Those are all things that I would enjoy having in my life. I definitely think I'll have to read your book as well and find out more about how to go about it. But yeah, no, very good idea. And thank you so much for coming on today.
No, my pleasure. And if you have any questions after you've read either book 1 or book 2, come back to me over email, or we can get on a call. I'd love to follow up.
Thank you.
You know what, Christopher? We'll just have you back on. I think that's the easiest way. Like I said, you're part of the Magical Learning Podcast multiverse now, so you're stuck in now. Unfortunately, you're locked in.
That sounds fine. That sounds great.
I also wanted to share, like, for me, so many good bits and pieces. Just talking about, explaining the strengths-based thing was good. I didn't know too much about it, and sort of that concept you're talking about where a lot of people feel a lot of obligation. I think that's something I've also been dealing with a little bit at the moment, and I feel like letting go of some of that has been definitely taking a bit of a weight off myself. But definitely the sticking point for me, and the biggest one, was surrounding yourself with people who do what you hate. That to me is like now a goal. I have to find these people so we can work together. So I love that. But Christopher, before you direct people to sort of where they can find you, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
So the only thing I would add to the conversation, which really reflects on Danette's kind words about who I am and what I am becoming, I had a realization less than a year ago that fish was not enough. So fish is how we live our lives. Fulfillment, inspiration, success, and happiness is how we live our lives. But why we live our lives is love. And book 3 is called Expansive Love. And it will integrate fish philosophy into living a life of love. So that's my next project.
That sounds really good. I think we'll definitely, when that's coming out, you'll definitely have to be on so we can break it all down, because that sounds like a great conversation. Now, Christopher, people I'm sure have been listening to this, loved what you've shared. I mean, I think everybody's probably that's listening to this is want to grab a copy of the book. But did you want to just direct people to A, where the best place is to reach out to you, and B, any sort of resources that you think you'd like to promote for people so they can find out a bit more? Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can find me, Christopher Miller, in Wellington, New Zealand, and just connect to me there anytime. And the best place, there's a couple of good places on my website. So my website is christopher-miller.com, and there's both a resources page, which has resources for business owners, individuals, and Clifton Strengths coaches, and then there's a publications page, and both of my books are available as a free PDF download if people want to download the books. And then paperback copies can be purchased and shipped around the world. And the Let's Talk Love cards are also on the publications page of my website.
Fantastic. Well, we've got all the links in the description now, so if you want to go check those out, just open the description of this podcast, click it. Christopher, I want to thank you so much for being an amazing guest. It's been a great conversation. Leggers and Danette, thank you so much. Great conversation as well. Danette's just sent a virtual hug to Christopher, and Christopher's reciprocated. It's been beautiful. So if you want to watch the video of this podcast or any others, jump on Spotify or YouTube. And until next time, everybody, thank you so much for sharing. And as always, have a magical week.